Hello and welcome to the Brains podcast. Today I am joined by Dr. Marc Mortiboys. We will be diving into a completely different way of thinking about dentistry in this episode, one that goes beyond teeth and into the emotional, physical, and even energetic roots of health. Today we will explore how his Dental Shaman Movement is changing the way we understand healing and why your mouth might hold more insight into your health than you even realize. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Oh, I'm really excited to be here. Really so excited. I feel I've got a lot to share.
Good stuff. Mark, to start us off, I would love to go back to the heart of your work, the Dental Shaman. It's such a distinctive and thought-provoking identity. For anyone hearing that phrase for the first time today, what does it mean and how would you describe the mission behind it?
Wow, it's a beautiful question. And I kind of want to introduce that I am a traditionally trained dentist. And I trained at Guy's Hospital back in 1982 till the end of 1986. So it's 2026 right now. So that tells everyone that it's about 40 years since I qualified as a general dentist. And wow, have things changed over that 40 years? And only 3 years ago, after my 37 years of life experience, I felt called to kind of come out of a spiritual closet and actually share what I've been seeing and witnessing and experiencing through that 37-year period. And I was actually going on quite numerous shamanic healing training courses. I was up in the Scottish Highlands 3 years ago in May 2023, and I was on a 10-day training course to facilitate sweat lodges in the North American style with a beautiful lady called Two Birds. And there was a big group of us, about 15 of us, and we had to endure or go through the training process of building sweat lodges, but also spending many hours in the sweat lodges. And during one of those sweat lodges, it was a 2-hour sweat. It was kind of quite a strong one. I started getting visions that maybe the time has come to start sharing my wisdom and experience from clinical life, as well as my travels and experiences with indigenous cultures that happened to me nearly 36 years ago, back in 1990 in Indonesia. And because it was a shamanic training and it was more Native American training, I was kind of sensing this term, the dental shaman, either as an identity or as a brand or as a name, just to share my story, really. And I really struggle with that because I don't really feel I'm a shaman. However, people have called me a shaman over my years, and certainly people have called me a wizard. And in dentistry, I've been seen as a bit of a dental wizard with my techniques and styles. And prior to my shamanic training, I was trained in traditional psychology, plus slightly alternative psychology, as in hypnotherapy and the healing arts, moving into hypno-healing, neurolinguistics, and the understandings of psychology and influence. And I resisted that term, the dental shaman, and actually in my head it was, no, I'm going to be called the dental medicine man. I feel safe with that. I feel really comfortable. I feel I am a medicine man. I feel more of an oral physician than a dental technician or a dental surgeon. And in my training at Guy's Hospital, we're very much taught that we are dental surgeons. And in fact, you get a degree in dental surgery. And therefore I felt safe with that. But when I was reflecting after the sweat lodge, it kept haunting me almost like, Mark, no, yeah, that's not you. You are the dental shaman. Whether that's me, my energy, my knowledge, my experience, I don't know. But it felt safe 3 years ago to launch an identity. Did it on the typical channels on YouTube and social media. And it became initially just, what's the right way of putting it? Kind of a sharing and caring kind of portal for people to ask me questions. It was a free service because I used to do it 30 odd years ago. I was on television on a breakfast show on Channel 5 for about 10 episodes. I kind of created my own show on Channel 5, but also I was very regularly on radio. And the play of words, the agony uncle, the agony dentist. A lot of people associate dentistry, sadly, with agony. So that really felt like a way to go easily. Just start on social media, get experience at talking on the screen and giving advice and guidance. Not just traditional oral health guidance, but also more what I would call the natural health movement, the biological health movement, and even now the functional dental health movement. And my twist on it is the shamanic dental health movement, which is integrating really the trinity of mind, body, and spirit. And I actually have a triskelion, which is a very ancient Celtic tattoo, which is very much apparently the first or the oldest symbol on the caves, and actually in Ireland, believe it or not. And to me, the Trinity, depending on your upbringing, can mean very religious connotations, but I'm really comfortable with mind, body, spirit. And in my training as a dentist, it's very, very physical with a little bit of emotional, the psychology of dental anxiety, the psychology of why people are grinding their teeth, or why people are actually having foods and drinks that maybe are destructive. When we're stressed, we tend to call for sugars and alcohols and cigarettes, etc. So I felt like my training was very much mind slightly, but mainly body. But then my life's journey, in particular a near-death experience, I've actually had a number of near-death experiences, but I had a crazy one back in 1990 when I was in Malaysia at the time. But I'd just come out of Australia for a year, just working out in the outback and spending a lot of time with the Aboriginals. But I felt called to the jungles of Indonesia, and in particular this magical little island called Siberut off Sumatra. And I spent about 10 days with a tribe, the Mentawai tribe, and lived totally indigenously. There was a group of about 5 other Westerners with us, but we had to be in the headgear, face paint, loin skin, and barefoot. And most of it was swamp. All the huts were on, or the homes were on stilts, and we had to literally go into the jungles and live for 10 days barefoot. And there was a time when we were hunting for a wild pig with spears and arrows. It was kind of really quite an intriguing time. I saw this big snake just kind of slide past me, and I'm barefoot in this kind of knee-deep water in a jungle at a time, 1990, when all I had was an Olympus trip camera, no mobile phones, no one knew where I was. So it was very intriguing. But what happened after that was about a week later, I got typhoid. And I was in Malaysia, and so I was whisked into a local hospital, and apparently I died twice. And it was that experience in particular that shifted who I am today and how I perceive life in general, but also physical healing and the whole healing arts of mind, body, spirit medicine. And then that kind of, I feel now 36 years later, was really the turning point to drive the learnings and the experiences to help me get to this point where I can now share, not just from a textbook, but really from my heart and from my soul, how dentistry I foresee will not only shift in the future, but is kind of already happening now. And as a thought leader, I feel I'm one of the pioneers stirring that pot, not to antagonize in any kind of way, just to elevate and levitate a beautiful profession that is really second to none when you're in trouble. If you've got toothache, you've broken a tooth, you've got an infected wisdom tooth, or even if you want them moved straighter because you're kind of concerned about the look of your wonky teeth, for example, I think we have a fabulous, fabulous profession now where we can really fix a lot of things. However, are we really preventing oral health? Are we as a profession really acting more as dental mechanics and engineers rather than integrating more prevention? And dentistry, up to a point, is really just pushing dental prevention towards the dental hygienists and dental therapist groups, the sort of auxiliaries that support dentists. But more and more dentists are realizing that if we don't really share the oral health message, and not just the traditional one, but a much more empowering one, because the current oral health message is very much just brush and floss and go 6 monthly to your dentist. And if you did that, I'm sure you will improve your oral health. However, there are many other causes of oral health disorder other than just plaque that's lurking on our teeth. Things like the pH or the acidity, alkalinity imbalance or balance of your mouth, which then drives the ecosystem of your mouth. And we've all heard of our gut biome or the ecosystem of our gut or our stomach. And if it can get upset if you have an antibiotic, for example. Well, there's an ecosystem of our mouth as well, which can get very easily upset for many reasons. One, if we're a smoker, if we're a mouth breather and our saliva levels are evaporated just by breathing through our mouth. And once that balance shifts more into acidity, then our gum health and our dental health, and maybe even our oral health with risks of mouth cancer, etc., are much more at risk when we turn more acidic. So therefore, is it really just about flossing and brushing? That can help, and we must do that. And there are many ways that I teach to do that, because there are some very beautiful indigenous methods, like rubbing sticks that our ancestors used to rub on our teeth. And I could go on and on about that, but moving forwards with my mission, this birthed at this sweat lodge 3 years ago. And over the 3 years is really now forming quite a significant momentum. And on LinkedIn, for example, we're regularly talking, because even government now are realizing that unless we focus more investment and energy and training more oral health educators and facilitators, we're already in a mess. We're just going to get more and more into a mess. And it started with the kind of growth of obesity and now dementia. And a lot of these diseases are very much linked to oral health now. We're finding oral microorganisms in these body parts, like in the brain or in the heart, even in the pancreas. So when these microorganisms get in there, they can kind of seriously affect our general health and make us very much more inflamed, much more at risk of morbidity. And this oral systemic link now is becoming very, very fashionable. I would say it's kind of very trendy right now. And there are a number of different dentists and oral health educators on the news, getting on mainstream television and radio to share this kind of like clarion call that we need to really start taking this much more seriously, not just for dental health, but for physical health. And the way I see it is that the mouth is the portal. It's the portal to the rest of the body. And it's not just a physical portal. It's a mental and emotional one. That's where we speak from. Are we speaking from fear? Are we speaking from truth? Are we speaking from honesty or fakerism? What's the message? And that's why I'm here wanting to do podcasts and share my message, because I just feel like people are really, really thirsty for this knowledge now. Not many people are reading, I'm finding. So I've written plenty of blogs, plenty of information on my website, but I'm in the throes of launching a number of books this year. And I think a lot of people are, but I feel what I'm hearing is that the audiobook version will become more popular than the written book version, just because we're all just so overwhelmed with the amount of information that's out there now. And some of it may not be valid and some of it is. And so we have to be discerning with all this information that we're receiving right now. So I personally always come back to my personal truth. I don't want to share necessarily fads or quick ideas. They are really founded upon 40 years of experience.
Yeah, I think I'm one of those guilty people. There's so much out there. I consume things more through an audio version or a video version, like we're doing right now. So I'm happy that
100%.
you're doing it. And I'm just sitting here, I'm eating it up. It's so fascinating because I have heard that link between plaque and dementia. And I'm like, oh my God, I have to floss every day. So I can't wait to hear more of your take on that. But you, as you said, you started as more of a conventional dentist, and it seems like you've gone down this more holistic route.
Yeah, very much.
What was the turning point or the series of events that made you say, hang on a second, I can't continue working in this traditional way? What was that like?
Very good question. And I was blessed in many ways to have a little bit of a head start, because my mother is German. She passed away 3 years ago, and she was very, very naturopathic minded. And when you go to Germany, you see how they are different to the British culture in many ways, and certainly in their attitudes to healthcare. And I even remember, maybe I was about 10, I remember seeing a water flosser in someone's house and wondering what on earth that was. That's got to be, I'm nearly 62, so that's got to be like nearly 50 years ago. There was a water flosser in a German house. I mean, water flossers are starting to get slightly trendy now, but that's 50 years later. So that just gives you an idea of where the German mentality is with engineering, but also healthcare. And that's a really good head start in many ways, because I didn't find it difficult to look at eating better and maybe breathing better, all the principles of natural medicine that my mother was kind of indoctrinated up to a point. It was a bit irritating back in the day because we wanted to eat certain things like burgers, and she was like, no, you'll have to go to another place for that. We're not cooking burgers at home. So that was a head start. So when I went to my training, I was seen as quite alternative, even back in 1982. I was drinking soya milk in 1982, right?
Wow.
And I was at that time actually vegetarian. I wasn't vegan, but I was vegetarian. And I'm not vegetarian now, but fundamentally what I was aware of is kind of the attitudes to health at a time when if you wanted to eat vegetarian at a restaurant, all you got was like spaghetti and tomato sauce, right? So the world's really changed in the last 50, well, let's just say a number of decades. And then I had 2 years, my first 2 years in clinical practice, in one practice for my vocational training. And I found it very repetitive. Even in only 2 years, I started seeing people coming back that had fillings, had cavities and then fillings. And then I was still seeing either repair of those fillings or new treatments of new tooth decay. So that got me already a bit puzzled. And I was actually getting burnt out, even just in 2 years of doing dentistry. And it was intense. It was pretty much full on for 6 days a week. I had this calling. And in the early 80s, Australia was really kind of fashionable. I think it was when a few TV sitcoms were out there like Neighbours. And there was a lot of draw for people to have a gap year. When I was already 25, nearly 26, I felt to have a late gap year. But not really a gap year as such. I really wanted to work in the flying dental service. And so I really wanted more of a cultural exchange rather than just chill and sit out and decide what I'm going to do for my future, so to speak. I already was living my future, but I just felt like a calling to be exposed to other cultures and other ways and have some time out to really map out my way of doing dentistry. And in that year in Australia, it was very random kind of things, working on farms and doing kind of what I'd call more hospitality kind of work. So after a year, that whizzed by after a year. Yeah, I didn't feel ready to come back to the UK and I didn't do any dentistry. So I already had a year away from dentistry. And then I felt called, after talking to a couple of other travelers, to visit this tribe in Indonesia. I just really fancied, I felt very much called to a tribal experience. And that was just what it was. It was just such a tip upside down from conventional thinking. Even all the thinkings that were evolving in my year in Australia were really tipped upside down, living totally in a culture that has rarely seen the Western world. Obviously, this was only just opening. I think it opened up in the 70s. Now it's probably a lot more fashionable to go and visit tribes like the Mentawai tribe. I've seen a few videos on YouTube, for example, where people have gone to see them. So they're still accepting travelers and tourists, for want of a better word, seekers of their knowledge, hopefully. And that 10 days really shifted me. And then the near-death experience about a week later kind of really integrated what I learned and how I became someone very, very different. I felt, you know when you go away on holiday and you feel energized? It was like that again. And a lot of people say they have that feeling when they get born again through religions, the born again kind of movement in Christianity, for example. They say, and I don't know that I really felt Christianized. I just felt spiritualized, for want of a better word. I just felt very different. I could see differently. Like when I came out of my sort of slight coma type experience, when I was first looking out of my eyes, it was so new. So I understand where this rebirth idea comes, or this born again. It was like seeing life with new eyes, new vision. And sadly, it didn't really last that strongly, but an essence of it has been around me for the last 36 years. So I have that sort of psychic gift now that I don't think I really had before. And I would say, when I say psychic, more of an intuitive gift, like a gut feeling. I seem to have a very potent version of that. It seems like everything I think and feel seems to come true, which is kind of eerie when you kind of get vibes that someone's about to die, So, and I know psychics who have that gift never are allowed. There's a code of conduct never to actually express that thought. And I've had these thoughts, and a few days, few weeks, few months later, usually with my patients, getting to see their mouths. So as dentists, we do get to see how oral health affects general health, like I said earlier, but also how general health can affect oral health. So if we're really declining, maybe on our last journey, It really can show up in the mouth. Suddenly teeth are getting loose. Suddenly the gums are really bleeding. The breath starts to smell very differently. The smell of death, literally.
Wow, I want to dive into a little bit more about that because you've talked about things like jaw tension or the state of someone's smile can really tell you a lot more about what's going on with someone, maybe mentally and emotionally. Can you talk about that a little bit more on how you've seen stress or other things
Mm.
impact someone or a patient?
Very much so. I mean, I'll start with acting and the acting world, the thespian world. They're all taught all the facial expressions of anxiety and tension. And if you're watching a movie where it gets a bit tense, you'll see one of the actors will just clench their jaw muscle. The music will change. The jaw muscle will kind of go into like a bicep, kind of big and huge. It's called the masseter muscle. So when you clench that, that gets all solid. And as practitioners of the mouth and the healthcare providers of the mouth, we see not only the tension actually in the muscle may be causing symptoms like headaches, so muscle headaches, we like to call that, but that locking of the muscle can strain the joints. So a bit like a knee joint, the jaw joint can get kind of strained from all that tension. And then those muscles are really pulling a movable jawbone, the lower jaw, the mandible, into the skull. So that's constantly under tension. We're either pulling that jaw together and locking it, which is kind of more what I'd call a sort of a locked jaw tension, or somehow we're starting to find a way to move our teeth around. That's called bruxism or teeth grinding. And if you put two lumps of crystal together, because that's basically what teeth are, they're crystal coated hoof material, because dentin, which is under enamel, is like a hoof. So we've got this kind of small spongy calcium and phosphate bone-like material, hoof-like material, but it's coated in crystal. So you rub two crystals together, those crystals are going to wear down. So dentists will see tooth wear pretty much every day of their life, sadly, because there's an epidemic of tooth grinding, and the actual locking of the jaw and the teeth together is actually causing a different kind of issue. It can cause gum recession, because if you kind of constantly squeeze your teeth together, you're then blocking the blood flow to your teeth via the ligament that surrounds the teeth, because the teeth cannot just be in our bone. We would just smash our teeth if they were locked in bone. So that spongy ligament is like a shock absorber, and that is what's actually giving us all the energy and information via the blood supply in the ligament. And if we constantly crush that, it's not that different to when you wake up and you've slept on your arm and you've got that numb arm or tingly arm. We've all had it, I'm sure. And that constant lack of blood flow and lack of oxygen to our gum and our bone can cause atrophy or shrinkage of our gum and bone. So there are so many side effects of jaw tension, from breaking teeth, sensitive teeth, long in the tooth. And I personally don't believe it's about an aging process. I think it's a premature aging process, because you can be as young as in your teenage years or your 20s, constantly clenching and grinding and getting so-called long in the tooth.
It's fascinating stuff. It really, really is. But I'd love to touch on the business side of things because what you're building is it's not just philosophy. It's kind of this platform or this movement, as you said. How do you balance purpose and I'd say like mission with the practical side of building a successful business that can actually scale its impact?
Fantastic. I suppose one of the reasons why I'm here today is to activate what has been germinating for 3 years. And as I shared earlier, the brand name and the vision sort of manifested 3 years ago in a sweat lodge in Scotland, and then spawned into educational material. And the popularity of that has just kept me going. And my instincts were to just keep going anyway, but I didn't really need the validation. However, but I'm kind of now in this phase of growth where it's like it's just coming naturally. All I need to do is just keep moving forwards by being who I truly am, and just constantly communicating my truth and being my authentic self. And it's now getting to a point where, how can I say it? I don't feel I have to. I think I did try at the beginning, and now I'm not trying. It's like, I wasn't that comfortable doing it when I first started out, and it's just becoming more just me, who I am. Because when people see me in the clinic, that's who I am. So I'm kind of really like wanting to just take what I've been sharing on a one-to-one basis out to the world with all the modern ways of doing it. It's never been easy, because 30 years ago when I was on television, I think I had a PO box number and a newsletter written by snail mail, and now with email and websites and all the kind of technologies now, it's not necessarily easy, but it's simple. It's very simple. You just got to kind of find the people that can help you. And I felt Brains in particular have been very helpful with their mission to support thought leaders and create vehicles like podcasts and a wonderful magazine, etc. And I feel really pleased to be on the board of kind of thought leaders to kind of share on a sort of a group level as well. And I feel like right now, because I'm coming from truth and heart-centeredness, I'm attracting the right people. And when I mean right people, I mean like philanthropists and business guides that are wanting to see this movement succeed financially as a business, so that it can move forward as a movement and as a philanthropic movement, and even maybe as a sacred activistic movement to help improve government decision-making, local decision-making at school level, so we can really help shift the kind of challenge that we've now got in schools. Because when I was growing up in the 60s, we had school dentists. Now it's very rare to get a school dentist. And in other parts of the world, like in Scandinavia, they have school dentists and they have preventative programs. So I'd love personally to see that come back again into the UK, let alone globally. And because of my passion for indigenous cultures, because of my experiences, I've teamed up with a team in Bangladesh who helped me with some of my marketing and my kind of business side. And we're on a mission to go out into the indigenous communities of Bangladesh with oral healthcare programs. And there are a couple of organizations already in the UK doing this, and the Dental Shaman Foundation and Movement are kind of already in conversation on how to help support the Magic Dentist in particular, which is a beautiful new organization and new charity that's helping schools and children. And by aligning with that kind of organization, I just feel like doors are opening, and I don't know if I really have to think too much about it. All I have to do is make sure that we keep going forwards in the right way so that we're successful, so to speak.
For somebody listening to this conversation, probably me right now, and is wanting to maybe unlock the potential now, like with their own health and with their own oral health, what would you say is a very simple, very doable, at home, simple shift that they can introduce?
Fantastic. That's a really good question. And that's what I'm really about, because you can kind of, if you're not careful, bamboozle people and make things so complicated. And even just the thought of brushing and flossing for a lot of people is kind of a bit bamboozling, sadly. So I would like to say, what can you do that doesn't either cost you any money, and ultimately that is also, it's really about taking your mouth seriously and treating your oral health no differently to your physical health. So if you want to get fitter, you'll probably go to a gym, you'll think about your diet, you'll think about how you think and breathe. Well, they all interplay with oral health and dental health too. So if you're already on that sporty rehabilitation path, bring your mouth care into that. But if you're not, if you're someone who's really at a crisis point, either with your general health or your dental health, it all starts with awareness and self-honesty. And one of the biggest honesties is just get an assessment with a dentist. Most people just say, I don't want to go to a dentist, it's too expensive, they're going to tell me I need fillings and teeth out. So my guidance is, if you can just go and get an examination and a report, just like an MOT of your car, don't have to do any of it, just find out where you're at. So it's kind of self-honesty. Where are you at? Don't even judge what you get told. Just get some facts and ask for measurements, ask for x-rays, ask for measurements, photographs, and then a treatment plan or options of treatment plans. So that's kind of what you're going to have to do ultimately if you are worried about your teeth and you feel like there are problems with your teeth. But in terms of your activation, so I'm calling this the smile activation and the dental shaman path. And it all starts ultimately with self-awareness. And there's a big movement now. In my world, I'm constantly seeing people who are wanting to revert back to nature, go camping more, going outdoors more, wild water swimming, breath work, yoga, sweat lodges, etc. So there's a whole community of these people, and it's ever growing. And I want to kind of encourage the people who haven't really heard of this movement yet to actually look into this movement. And I'll just call it the self-awareness movement. You don't have to do yoga, you don't have to do Pilates, but just get aware of why people are doing all these things. And then once you get more self-aware, you find that you will calm your nervous system down, because I feel a lot of oral health is about what we call a dysregulated nervous system. And it's the nerve name is the vagus nerve. It's one of the kind of really important nerves to our autonomic nervous system. It kind of drives our rest and digest mode. So when we are calm, when we've been on a nice holiday, or we've just had a nice walk or a refreshing day, we are calmer and we're rested and digested, so to speak, compared to the more caffeinated, adrenalized kind of lifestyle that most of us are living. And I feel like if we don't get back in touch with rest and digest on a more purposeful level, we are going to end up getting physical signals that all wake us up and slap us around the face. So toothache, chipped teeth, sensitive teeth, bleeding gums, etc., all just alarm bells. So self-honesty, look in the mirror, brush your teeth, and if you're spitting blood, take it seriously. That's not meant to be happening. Be honest with yourself. Then on top of that, and this is my biggest message today, is get aware of the juices that you form in your mouth, called saliva. It's not water. It's an immunological, protective, beautiful, sacred, I call it a sacred fluid. And the sacred fluid that will actually protect your teeth. It will protect your gums, and maybe even protect the inside skin of our mouth. Why are people getting more mouth cancers, etc., etc.? Is this because we're losing some of the protection, apart from, on top of, I should say, maybe an increase in chemicals and irritants that are coming into our mouth? But maybe we're just losing some of our protection as well. And in terms of tooth decay and gum disease, there's now a lot of evidence to support that there's a higher incidence of those two diseases, which are still pretty much the most common diseases known to modern man, down to reduced saliva flow, quality. When I say quality, the pH. Because if you are very stressed yourself, your body will be very much more likely to be acidic, which is not healthy, in other words. So if your body is already acidic, your saliva can become acidic, and then that affects the ecosystem of the mouth, right? So it's all kind of cause and effect, the chicken and egg thing. So, are these bugs suddenly in our mouth because we kissed someone who had gum disease, for example? Potentially, yes. But equally, is the terrain not so healthy anymore that we've become more susceptible to these? I'd like to call them parasites, because these bugs that are causing tooth decay and gum disease are not meant to be there in the amounts that they are. They're meant to be there in their small amounts, but it's probably a bit like cockroaches. We're meant to have some cockroaches apparently on the planet, but we don't want them overgrowing the place, right? So I think every organism has a place. When we get into trouble, whether it's our soil, whether it's our mouth, whether it's our gut, is when the balance shifts into dysbiosis, which means dysfunction or out of balance. So if we get saliva aware, we have a chance. Because I would say 90% plus of our population have no idea what I'm talking about. They say, what do you mean by saliva aware? Well, you might be saliva aware if when you talk, you spray over people. So there are very few people who are hypersalivatory. And people are ducking these people. You have to wear like masks and shields. And often these people have learned to kind of put a hand over their mouth because they have an extreme amount of saliva. And they're blessed in many ways because they won't get tooth decay and gum disease. People with high amounts of saliva just seem to be the least prone to tooth decay and gum disease. So if you are the opposite, are you aware? So when you wake up in the morning, are you aware that your tongue is sticking against the roof of your mouth, for example? Or you've always got dry lips and you're always having to sip water, you feel dehydrated. And that could be coming from dehydration. So when you are aware that you are saliva low in volume, then you maybe have a chance to do something about it. And most people think, oh, maybe I should sip some water first. And that I'm not necessarily suggesting is what we need to be doing. We certainly need to be stimulating our saliva, and it may involve rehydrating the body, but not necessarily through sipping. Because if you sip constantly, you're constantly still washing away the saliva. So you're washing away that benefit. So if you are very low on water, maybe you need to drink like a half pint of water and just kind of drink it down. sipping per se could actually, and there's more and more research coming through that if we're constantly washing away our saliva, we're putting ourselves at risk. So sipping is really not a good idea. And especially now, sipping healthy drinks, whether they're lemon waters, whether they're smoothies full of acids, are we sipping and irritating our teeth with a constant washing of acidity? So let's get back to the power of saliva. If we have the normal amount of saliva in our mouth, we've got like an immune system, we've got a protection, we've got a buffering system that remineralizes our teeth, because every time we eat, we are demineralizing our teeth. That's nature. But nature designed us, I feel, and so do many people feel, to be having maybe 3 main meals maximum a day, and maybe a couple of light meals in between, but not to be constantly grazing and snacking on carbohydrates. So this regular snacking is constantly affecting our saliva pH and volume, etc., and making us more prone to tooth decay. And I remember 40 plus years ago learning at medical school that really tooth decay with sugar, the sugar link with tooth decay, was more about frequency than actually amount. And one of my teachers even said, come end of the evening after a meal, he would actually get out like a big tub of biscuits and cakes and chocolates and say to his family, his youngsters, right, it's kind of pudding time. You can eat as much as you want, but once you've finished, I'm closing the lid until the next day. And so he was kind of advocating the kind of, the message of consistency versus kind of volume. Meaning you can have as much sugar in theory as you like. I'm not necessarily pro this idea that you can have as much as you like, but kind of with a little bit of sense, think, I get the point. Dine out on it so you don't then want to have it again later.
Yep.
Yeah.
In Sweden we have something called Lördags goodies. It's a Saturday sweet. So the parents tell the kids, no sweets, but on Saturday have as much as you want. And obviously they stuff themselves and they can't even have that much anyway. So it's a good thing to have. We asked this question to all of our guests because it's Brains Magazine. We're working with, as you said, thought leaders. We're working with entrepreneurs, and we want to continue to inspire all of our listeners and readers. So I just want to ask you, what mindset do you credit most for your success and why you're sat here today?
Wow, what a great question. What is my mindset? My first most important one, because 3 years ago when I started out on my mission and wanting to share my knowledge, was it brought up a number of issues for me that I've been battling with for a lot of my life, and that's fear of ridicule. I remember Adam Ant sung a song called Prince Charming, and ridicule is nothing to be scared of. It was kind of a very, very powerful lyric for me growing up. And fear of persecution. And in my shamanic healing trainings and courses I've been on, I've really worked on those two. You may call it hypnotherapy, shamanic healing, shamanic journeying. There are many ways to psychologically look at your demons, look the demon in the eye and realize that it's just a memory, or it's just an interpretation of a memory, etc., etc. And I purged a lot. I've been purging a lot for many years, those kind of deep, dark-rooted fears. And I've now realized, having gone through significant purging of these fears, for want of a better word, that they were really holding me back, and they were stopping me going public with my knowledge. And I felt very safe one-to-one in my clinic, just sharing all my knowledge and maybe writing it in a newsletter to the clinic and the 5,000 patients, etc. But I felt really awkward about coming out and sharing that knowledge. So I feel like just by, one, being honest, two, being brave enough to face those fears and go on these journeys. You don't have to do a shamanic journey, but some form of introspection, and ideally with a coach, I feel, because I don't know if you can be self-honest just on your own. It's, we all have, most winners have coaches. Top sports people will have more sports coaches around them and psychological coaches than most the general public. And I've now heard that this is the case in entrepreneurship and business leaders, thought leaders. They are surrounded by coaches too. So I was blessed nearly 30 years ago to be one of the first people to bring Tony Robbins, or Anthony Robbins, to the UK and get involved in all the fire walking and all his missions when he started with Unlimited Power was his first book, and Awaken the Giant Within was his second book. And I was just a ticket salesman back in those days. I was just in love with his books. And that got me on that journey of that success formula. And to me, that success formula is, just accepting a no and carrying on. You don't need that validation. You're just going to keep going. If you've got a truth, you just keep sharing your knowledge, sharing your message. So that's probably my number one thing, is just to keep going, even when you feel like things are not working, not happening, and get really clear. Are you coming from your heart or your head? And I've been on with self-analysis. I've noticed things that have frustrated me in the past. I realized maybe I was looking for validation. I was looking for acceptance somewhere along the lines. And I got very stressed by those projects. Whereas when I come from my true essence, one, it feels effortless. And two, I don't have any of this fear of persecution or fear of rejection or anything like that. It's just like, I'm just being me, and I'm Marmite. I'll always be Marmite. You'll either like it, not like it. There won't be really any kind of in between, like, I kind of like Marmite. You'll either like my style. And I've since read that no matter who you are, whatever you have to say will kind of like excite some people, and it will irritate some people. It's a fact of life. The world is so multi-dimensional that if you're looking for everyone to agree with you, you'll really not be happy. If you're looking for everyone to kind of hate you, I think you'll even be unhappy. So people who are really angry, they want everyone to hate them, but there'll always be someone who will love you. So when you get off that one and you just realize that you just got your message, you will find your tribe, you'll find your fans. So that kind of loosened me up significantly. And I just don't have any kind of fear of rejection or failure anymore. It's almost like get knocked down, get up again. And if you're getting knocked down, why? Did you really kind of come from the heart here? Are you learning a lesson? So what's the lesson? So I often ask, what's the lesson here? And that's really helpful. And that I learned from Anthony Robbins years ago, 30 plus years ago. What's good about this? What's good about this? Always have that mantra. What's good about this? Even when things are just hitting the fan. What's good about this is a great mantra.
That.
Yeah.
What's good about this? Try to take positive, try to take lessons from everything. You know what I mean? That's truly inspiring and really, really interesting. I hope that everyone listening today, I'm sure that they've been able to take so much from this, from your experience, from being a conventional dentist to then going on the holistic approach to what your mouth, as you say, the gateway to what's actually going on overall. And then, as you say, like, what's the lesson in this? What can I take from this? So thank you so much for sharing all that insight. All of the links will be attached to this episode wherever it's posted. Thank you for today.
I've really enjoyed being here. Thank you.